Hey guys, welcome back to EAK TV. I'm delighted to have Jeffrey Bandman with us today from Bandman Advisors. Welcome.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to our conversation.
So how are you enjoying Decentralized 2018 so far?
It's really fantastic. This is my first time attending the conference. I understand it's its second year, but meeting a ton of new people, seeing what's going on in blockchain and crypto in this part of the world, really fascinating. I'm enjoying it a lot so far.
So I understand you did a speech earlier. Could you tell us a bit more about what your speech was about?
Yeah, sure. I gave a talk about it was called Who Regulates Bitcoin? And it was a 15-minute talk, so it's a pretty broad subject. But really the focus of my talk was to try to give people in the audience some themes or kind of overarching principles that they could use to understand the regulation of all the different types of crypto assets, security tokens, asset tokens, utility tokens, and to understand some of the themes that regulators in Europe and around the world are thinking about.
And guys, I believe you can watch that on the Decentralized 2018 YouTube channel, so watch that. I'll be watching that later on this evening.
Oh yeah, must see TV.
Yeah, must see, absolutely. What kind of projects do you work with Bandman Advisors?
Sure. So I've had a career that's taken me through a few different areas. I started my career as a lawyer, then I was a business executive in financial services in the US and Europe, and then worked in financial regulation. And it was really while working as a regulator that while overseeing market infrastructure, I also started to work on blockchain and virtual currency issues. The CFTC was one of the first regulators in the world to provide legal certainty around the status of virtual currencies, at least within the context of that. So I just got very excited. I'd been working in FinTech innovation my whole career, and so now that after spending a few years in public service, and public service was a great experience, which I'd recommend to all your viewers, just as really an opportunity to learn and engage and give back. There's so much exciting innovation happening that I wanted to be working kind of alongside the innovators. So what I do now, I work with a portfolio of different clients. Some of them are smaller companies that are trying to create the new kind of market structure or build the building blocks of our new decentralized crypto asset or blockchain economy. Others are more traditional financial services or traditional companies that are trying to figure out how they can get a foothold into the digital asset world. And then I also work on some digital asset policy initiatives to develop a code of conduct, taxonomy, and really higher standards that are driven by the crypto asset industry to produce this new economy we're moving towards.
Okay, so looks like you've got quite a holistic view of what's going on in terms of your public sector, private sector, and the different opinions, of what's going on in those spaces. So, what most excites you in the application of blockchain technology?
There's so much. It's hard to know where to start. I mean, I think we're really just at the beginning, and I'm very excited by the idea of a more decentralized world. I think that at the time that Bitcoin was released into the world, there was a concern about the concentration of power among, central banks and governments. But I think, in fact, people are even more disturbed now by the concentration of power of large technology companies that have so much influence over people's lives, and the idea that we can somehow build a next generation of that, which I think will improve people's lives in a lot of ways. And so I think part of it is just how is that going to work? How are cryptonomics, how are machines going to reward other machines as part of somehow producing this future? That's really exciting. And then I think also, I think innovation often starts, and we saw this with the internet, where people take things they already did and then just put them on this new thing. And then after a period of time, people actually figure out new things that they can do, which would only be possible with these new technologies. And then as you have a convergence of technologies, even more things are. So I think we're just at the beginning of that innovation cycle. And for me, I feel that I can help companies kind of bridge the gap they're trying to develop businesses, they're trying to develop products, they're trying to set priorities, they're trying to interface with all the regulations in financial services, and helping people to make sense of all that is what really excites me.
So you mentioned that you previously worked for the CFTC. Can you go into some detail about their approach to blockchain regulation?
Sure. So I'd say that the CFTC has historically, and I think continuing today, I think had a very strong track record of interacting with innovation and the markets that the CFTC historically regulated were commodity markets where things were traded in open outcry pits. And so over the last 40 years, those have migrated to electronic trading. The types of products that are covered have become to kind of more intangible products. So there's a history of dealing with innovation there already. Now for the CFTC, ultimately for a regulator, your authority comes from the statute that you operate under, what Congress in the case has given us. And so there's a definition of what a commodity is, because the CFTC is the Commodity Futures Trading Commission. And as it turns out, the definition of commodity is extremely broad. Basically, almost anything that's a noun could be viewed as a commodity. And so in 2014 and 2015, when the CFTC first started to see activities around virtual currencies come into our attention, one of the first things it did was to provide clarity or legal certainty that that this definition of a commodity in the CFTC's view did in fact include virtual currencies. At the same time, the CFTC has been working to balance kind of enforcement and customer protection against promoting innovation. And I think a very important thing the CFTC did, and I was very proud to be responsible for the design and launch of this with our chairman, was to create an innovation hub where innovators could engage directly with the regulators, come in and talk to them and get their feedback. And that was launched about a year and a half ago. It's called Lab CFTC, and it was the first of its kind launched by a U.S. market regulator, and something very proud to have been a part of getting off the ground.
So what do you think that larger jurisdictions like the US could learn from smaller jurisdictions like Malta in their approach to blockchain?
I think that something I've seen firsthand from my work at the CFTC is there's a lot of collaboration and discussion across regulators. Regulators are watching and learning from one another and expressing their concerns. One of the challenges both for regulators in the U.S. or for innovators in the U.S. is, it is a system of checks and balances and overlapping jurisdictions, and you don't really have the kind of one-stop shopping or, kind of a single regulator or a limited number of regulators. In the U.S. we have 3 federal bank regulators, and each state has a regime for bank regulation, and there's a large number of financial services regulators and securities, insurance, and other thing. It's a very complicated regime, but that is, so I think the regulators in the U.S. at a federal and state level are, trying very hard to monitor and collaborate with each other. Now Malta, I think, has put together a very thoughtful and detailed framework, that I think does provide some regulatory certainty. I think they're in the process of sort of staffing up so that they can actually, it's very important not only to create the regulatory regime, but to be able to resource it so that all the firms that want to come and be under that structure can actually get the attention, get their applications reviewed and processed. So I think all these jurisdictions have a lot to learn from one another.
So in terms of what do you think are the biggest barriers right now and obstacles facing blockchain technology within the financial services industry?
I think there's a number of them. I think misunderstanding is still a big one, and education is there. And coming to a conference like this, many of the people here have been steeped in this, for years, some for close to a decade. But most people out there, kind of blockchain, Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, consensus mechanisms, smart contracts, these are still very unfamiliar and sometimes frightening concepts. So I think that we can get caught in this kind of echo chamber or bubble for those of us who spend a lot of time in this space and forget that a lot of people who are well-meaning and who are very important are still getting up the curve. So I think that's going to be one of the biggest barriers, is just educating all the people you need to bring along. And second, I think it's just the complexity. Blockchain and DLT and kind of crypto asset, come in so many shapes and sizes, and it's not one size fits all, and sort of figuring out what's the right regime and structure for each of them is going to be very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I know there's been a long delay, people are very looking forward to the Bitcoin ETF if and when it ever comes. Do you think one will ever be approved by the SEC?
I think they eventually will. Exactly when they'll do that, whether that will be a 2019 event or a 2020 event, is a bit hard to say. Something they did that was very important at the beginning of 2018 in January was one of the most important divisions of the regulator, that Division of Investment Management, actually published a letter that included all of their objections and concerns. And so it's given the industry an opportunity to respond to those and to educate the record. I think the SEC still has concerns about physical custody of crypto assets, and how do you safeguard that, and what's an appropriately compliant way to do it. I think they still have concerns about the fact that many of the underlying spot or cash markets where you have price formation, that is there adequate oversight and supervision of them. And so I think they'll need to get comfortable with that, but I know the industry is working hard to address those concerns.
So do you have any new developments or any new news that you can share with us regarding Bandman Advisors, or anything that you're working on?
It's been 2018 has been a fascinating year. In addition to my commercial clients, I've been working on this policy initiative called Global Digital Finance. Your viewers can look it up at gdf.io. But that's been working to develop a code of conduct and taxonomy for crypto assets. It's an international effort. My co-founders are in the UK and Norway and Hong Kong, and we've had a lot of engagement with the regulators. But developing that and trying to have an industry-led approach to promote those higher standards and built by a community, that's been exciting. I've been teaching a seminar for seniors in the global affairs major at Yale University, where I was an undergraduate, and kind of teaching them and working with the natively digital generation on kind of crypto assets and blockchain and public policy, and sort of working with them to understand it, and they're the ones who are going to have to live with it their whole lives. So that's been really exciting, and continuing to work with clients in the US and around the world as we're all trying to navigate this together. It's been a really exciting year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for your time, Jeffrey. That's really interesting. Guys, that's EAK TV. Make sure you subscribe below. Thanks again for your time, Jeffrey. Enjoy the rest of the conference.
Thanks so much for having me.